hundreds of young girls, fast asleep in their beds, are awakened by the sound of gunfire. Armed attackers have stormed their boarding school and set fire to dozens of buildings. Nearly 300 of them are dragged from their dorm, loaded onto trucks, and carried away deep into the forest. Amina Shawak is one of the lucky ones. She made a run for it and escaped. We thought they were soldiers, and they asked us to board a vehicle, she says, which was headed towards Damboa. And my friends and I jumped from the vehicle and ran back home. Authorities say this was another brazen attack by the jihadist terror group Boko Haram, whose name means Western education is forbidden. The group's aim to establish Islamic law. They've attacked churches, mosques, and markets. Entire villages have been razed to the ground, residents killed in firebomb attacks, shot, or hacked to death. This time, their targets were young girls. It's not the first time they've kidnapped young girls. In November, dozens were rescued during a raid by Nigerian security services. Some were pregnant, some had babies, and others were forced into marrying their kidnappers. And Boko Haram's campaign of terror is expanding. The same day the girls from Chibok were kidnapped, the militants carried out an attack on a crowded bus station in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, killing 71 people and wounding more than 130. Attacks like this have become part of the reality of everyday life here.
The Boko fighters admit they share the same aims and ambitions of the Islamic State, only they want a caliphate here in Africa.
We don't want the flag of any other country. We don't want the Cameroon flag or the Nigerian flag. We only want to serve under our own black jihadi flag. We want to create our own state of Sharia law.
In every nation, in every region, now has the decision to make. Either you are with us, I mean real Muslims whom are following Salaf footsteps, or you are with the Obama, Professor Holland, George Bush, Clinton. I forgot not Abraham Lincoln, Ban Ki-moon and his people generally, and any unbeliever. This is a tawhid. This war is against Christians. I mean Christians generally.
Yeah, we saw that guy posing, doing his video today in front of that armed personnel carrier. And how do they recruit? Are they at gunpoint the way the Kony people do, or how do they get this membership this big?
It appears that they use similar methods that other militias in West Africa and Central Africa have used, including abducting young teenage boys and then forcing them into the group and brainwashing them through violence. But they do also benefit from some grassroots support because there is a tradition of rejection of the Nigerian leadership and the Nigerian government there. And Boko Haram has been able to take Islamist ideology, rejection of Nigeria's central government, and put it in a framework that has resonated amongst local people.
Driving west from the city of Maiduguri, the Borno state capital, the roads get narrower as the towns get smaller. After 3 hours, VOA ends up here, in a village called Shakau, to meet this woman, Falmata Abubakar. She says she is the mother of this man, Nigeria's most wanted terrorist, Abubakar Shakau, the leader of Boko Haram. Village elders and community leaders confirm that she is the woman who here gave birth to Shakau, whose father was a local district imam. Shakau looks like many communities in this part of Nigeria. People here say they often hide that they are from Abubakar Shakau's hometown because others may fear they have Boko Haram connections. Falmata says her son left Shakau as a boy to continue his Islamic studies in Maiduguri, a center of religious studies for hundreds of years. Shekau was an Almajiri, just like these boys. Almajiri are sent off by their parents to study the Quran in a school called a Sangaya, like this one. A teacher watches them as they learn to memorize the entire Quran. Almajiri beg on the streets for food, and it is believed that Shekau did the same. At some point in his studies, Shekau, according to his mother, met this man, Mohammed Yusuf, the founder of Boko Haram, who condemned Western education as sinful. Famata says her son was brainwashed.
Since Shekau met Mohammed Yusuf, I didn't see him again. Yes, he's my son, and every mother loves her son, but we have different characters. He brought a lot of problems to many people. Where can I meet him to tell him that these things he is doing are very bad? He brought many problems to many people, but I am praying for God to show him the good way.
Her son, Shekau, is accused of leading an insurgency that has killed more than 30,000 people in northeastern Nigeria and the Lake Chad region. Destroying schools is at the heart of Boko Haram's manifesto, and the group has attacked more than 1,400 schools like this one, the first primary school in northeastern Nigeria. Boko Haram fighters killed the principal and secretary. In 2014, Boko Haram invaded this school and killed 59 students. In February of this year, the sect kidnapped more than 100 students from here, the Dapchi Girls Secondary School. The insurgents returned the students a month later, but held on to one of them, Leah Sharibu, reportedly because she refused to convert to Islam in exchange for her freedom. Her mother, Rebecca, and her brother say they feel in their hearts that Leah is still alive. It's the 2014 abduction of the Chibok girls from their secondary school that brought Boko Haram into the international spotlight for unprecedented condemnation. The Bring Back Our Girls activists are still demanding the freedom of at least 100 Chibok girls, including Dorcas Yakubu, who turned 20 years old this week, marking her birthday while in Boko Haram captivity. In 2016, Dorcas appeared in a proof-of-life video released by the terrorists. Falmata has also been affected by the insurgency. She says she can never curse her son, but he has become someone that she doesn't even recognize anymore.
He just took his own character and went away. This is not the character I gave him. I don't know what this type of behavior is. It's only God who knows.
Okay, respect. I'm going to ask you, do you know what happened on Christmas Day in Nigeria? You know what happened on Boxing Day in Nigeria?
No, tell me.
ABC's Kelly Kobieo reports on what is happening to Christians in one part of Africa.
On one of the holiest days of the year, Christmas hope turned to horror. God, my brother! Explosions ripped through 5 churches in Nigeria as Christians celebrated the holiday. At least 35 people died. Local hospitals are overflowing with the injured.
You come to the church deliberately to bomb the children of God on the Christmas day, and we fold our hands. I'm not taking that. I'm not taking it.
It was a coordinated attack, the work of Boko Haram. A congressional report last month flagged the group as an emerging threat because of its rapid rise and possible links to al-Qaeda. Violence between Nigerian Christians and Muslims is not new, but a report by a Catholic aid agency found attacks on Christians are on the rise here and around the world. In Egypt, Christians protested after 13 were killed and a church burned earlier this year. 100,000 Christians have reportedly fled that country since the fall of Hosni Mubarak.
You've got more people who are engaging in what they view as vigilante justice, going after Christians and other religious minorities that they view as the infidel.
Nigeria's president has promised justice, a promise Christians in his country hope he'll keep.
Are you aware of what happened on Boxing Day in Nigeria? Okay, let me take it further. Last week here, are you aware of what happened in Nigeria?
West Africa has a growing jihadist problem.
There's been a surge in violence.
In Mali, where at least 53 soldiers and 1 civilian have been killed.
In Niger, the army reports 71 soldiers have been killed by Islamist militants.
And while the region has seen violence like this for years, recently things have taken a turn for the worse. Groups with links to Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State have been waging larger, more sophisticated attacks and are expanding into new territory. By all accounts, they're thriving, making West Africa the new front in the fight against Islamic extremism.
The situation is so bad, the UN has warned of an impending disaster.
This morning, Islamic militants are launching new and deadly attacks in Nigeria. It's part of Boko Haram's violent rampage across that country. Their goal is to create an Islamic state in Africa.
Now, it is hard to imagine their brutality could get any worse, but it has, with the use of children to carry out their bloody deeds.
2 separate attacks over the weekend left more than 20 dead. Both took place in crowded marketplaces. Both used child suicide bombers. One little girl, no more than 10 years old. The first real insight into this trend came when a 13-year-old girl refused to detonate a suicide vest packed with explosives in December, in the same area of northern Nigeria where Boko Haram attacked just weeks before. The girl was arrested by police and told them her father had given her to Boko Haram, probably for financial gain. The group said she would go to paradise and threatened to kill her when she resisted being strapped into the vest. Children are in ready supply in Boko Haram camps, and sources tell us they could be the orphan children of fighters killed in the conflict or abducted school children taken as the spoils of war. There has been global condemnation.
The use of a child to detonate a bomb is not only morally repugnant, but constitutes an egregious form of child exploitation under international law.
And the Nigerian military says Boko Haram will not get away with its actions.
We want to reassure Nigerians that no portion of Nigeria's territory has been or will be considered to terrorists.
But despite this, Boko Haram's rampage continues relentlessly.
Let me tell you, if I was to tell you that several Christians got killed on Christmas Day or Boxing Day in Nigeria as a result of this whatever religion you want to call it, would I be wrong in calling them savage?
That's your allegation.
Listen, I'm talking about Christians. Listen, I'm talking about Christians here. Then, just over a week ago, an 8-year-old boy executed a Nigerian Christian. So would somebody like me now be wrong in calling?
That's the thing, though. I'm sorry to say that, Hector. Can I just say one thing here? I don't believe what you're reporting, though. This is, hold on a minute, because I believe
go to the BBC.
From Nigeria needs to be, hold on, the news from Nigeria needs to be verified, because there are allegations, hold on,
go
even
to the
Boko Haram is funded by the Nigerian government.
Go to the BBC. I'm giving you the link now. Go to the BBC and find your research from there.
But
okay?
that's what I'm saying. Hold on a minute. Can you give us any?
I wasn't even talking to respect. I wasn't talking to you.
Hold on a minute.
I was talking to respect. I wasn't talking to you.
You're talking about my faith, but you're talking about my faith, and you're misrepresenting my faith, so I have a right to reply. My point is, Boko Haram are not Islamic. They are actually a creation of the Nigerian government. So the issues that you have in your country are a creation of your own people.
In what way? In what way did Nigerian government create Boko Haram? In what way?
Yes.
In what way?
Yes, and are funded by your own ministers are funding them for their own tribal issues. So they can rob their country blind. Yes, and they can get funding from the West. Yes, this is Nigerian corruption.
Have you got the Dalil according to your Islamic faith? Have you got the Dalil?
Yeah, bring your Dalil of any Islamic scholar that says that they're Islamic, because we're free from them. We've got nothing to do with Boko Haram.
It's one of the world's deadliest terrorist organizations.
Boko Haram fighters are not afraid of dying. Indeed, it looks like the goal is to ultimately die and go to paradise.
Founded in Nigeria, it's now spread to Chad, Niger, and northern Cameroon.
Go to the BBC. It is there. That's my Dalil. Now you give me your Dalil. Says it is the Nigerian government that is sponsoring Boko Haram. Can I have your Can I have your proof?
Yo, Hector, 1 minute. Yeah, she said.
Can I have your proof?
Listen.
I'm not listening.
Yeah,
when I was asking you the question,
can I have your
listen.
Let's have some parliamentary procedure here, all right? Oh God.
All right, let him finish and be quick, because I ain't got time, fam. I've got to go.
I've asked her a question, so I'm waiting for her to reply before you jump.
Okay, fine. Can you repeat the question, please? Sorry. Thank you.
What the question was, I have given you the evidence to back up.
Okay, you haven't given me the evidence. You directed me.
Here we go. I've not even finished.
Let her talk.
But she asked me a question and I'm replying, and she jumped in with that. Fucking
okay, sorry, I'll let you finish.
Okay, there. Let her talk. Can I talk now? Can I talk now, Mr. Moderator Respect? Okay. You asked me for the proof, and I told you go to the BBC. And I asked you a question. Can you now give me your proof that the Boko Haram is being sponsored by the Nigerian government?
Okay, can I respond?
Feel free.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I didn't know that you trust the BBC so much, because when the BBC let me finish. I'm allowed to respond. When the BBC is actually even reporting on internal matters, I've heard people within your camp disparaging and saying they don't even trust the BBC. So it's quite interesting that you choose to believe the BBC on this matter. What I will say, the reporting of a matter, listen, the reporting of a child who supposedly killed somebody is not evidence Islamic, something Islamically permitted to go and assassinate a Christian or just to kill somebody because of their faith. It's a research that I have done into what is going on in Nigeria has personally led me to believe, and if you want me to go and bring out my evidences as to why I believe issues in Nigeria are far more to do with the mismanagement of the government, okay, and inability of the government to be able to hold on a minute. No, I'm going to finish my statement. Listen, I'm giving you a collective. You can't dictate to me how I should answer my. Are you dictating?
Why don't you just let her talk?
Yeah, all I want to say is that
to the point.
Done into Nigerian politics has led me to conclude this Boko Haram is a creation of the Nigerian government or some ministers, and I have read that, and I can post the links for you in the back chat. And I said, Boko Haram are not an Islamic government, Islamic group. Even the likes of Al Qaeda have actually distanced themselves because of their conduct and their behavior.
Boko Haram is much more internationally connected, including to various Al Qaeda factions and other Islamist groups around the world.
I know they've gone after more moderate clerics, other Muslims. They're indiscriminate in who they kill that disagrees with them. How close are they to Al Qaeda?
I believe they are very close to Al Qaeda. A report that came out this week suggests that they received as much as $70 million from various Al Qaeda factions. I'm not sure if it's that much money, but it's very clear to me that when Osama bin Laden was alive in Pakistan, he was communicating and ordering money to be sent to Boko Haram in Nigeria through various Al-Qaeda factions in the Maghreb region or Northwest Africa. And it was from that money and that ideological support that Boko Haram was able to turn itself from a more local group in northeastern Nigeria into one that now has a trans-regional effect.
Abhorrent, nothing to do with us, because Nigeria, due to its creation, and
can I respond?
Has a lot of.
Wait, let her finish.
No, when she finishes, can
let your government is not able to handle. Okay, I'll let you.
Okay, guys. Shut your mouth.
Shut up. Can we just
shut up.
Who the fuck are you?
I'm your mom. I'm your mom.
Okay, please.
That's what I want.
Yo, we're not gonna go nowhere if we keep on talking shit. Just chill out.
Shut up, Mohammed.
No, you shut up.
No, for fuck's sake, just let her talk.
I'm listening to my
too many interferences.
Exactly.
Have you ever seen the comment section? I've been watching you.
Talk.
I've been watching you. You've been talking shit.
Shut the fuck up.
Go fix yourself.
Shut your mouth.
You shut your mouth. Let Sumaya talk.
Are you still dating that lady that's already married?
Oh,
Listen,
guys, come on.
can
Halim,
Sumaya please
we're trying
respond?
to have a decent conversation. I know.
Exactly.
So let's just keep it, not personal. So Hector, you wanted to say something?
Yes, like as I was saying, apart from the BBC, I gave you BBC, go check BBC, because if I was to tell you now to call a relative of mine in Nigeria, will you be able to? You wouldn't.
Sorry,
so
go on.
if you won't listen, you claim, oh, I'm listening to the BBC. I'm listening to the BBC, but it suits you when the BBC narrates the story.
No, I was just pointing out that other time.
But what I'm saying is, aside from the BBC, I have relatives in Nigeria.
Okay.
When I heard the news,
right.
when I read the news, I called them up to confirm, and they told me positive.
Hi, I'm Anne Nwawadu. Here's your Channels TV evening news recap for February the 10th, 2020. Boko Haram insurgents have killed 10 stranded passengers on Sunday night at Auno, the village near Maiduguri in Borno State. That's according to the theater commander, Operation Lafia Dole, Major General Olusegun Adeniyi. However, conflicting reports from eyewitnesses suggest that at least 20 people died in the attack and no fewer than 18 cars, including heavy-duty trucks, were set ablaze during the attack. An unspecified number of people, mostly women, are also believed to have been abducted.
So are you saying those people, listen, are you not telling me that those people now listens to the BBC as well?
Okay, I want to ask you a question. No, that's fine. Okay.
Yeah, go on.
I want to ask you a question. Okay. Has Boko Haram always existed in Nigeria?
Obviously not.
Okay, so they are a recent creation.
Yes, 100%.
Have Christians and Christians and Muslims in Nigeria lived together previous to the creation of this group?
Are you asking me that question?
Yes.
Yes, they have. So it is a stupid question. Listen, it is a stupid question for you to ask me.
Very smart question.
You can call it that. What I'm saying to you is that the evidence of this group is not a representation of the Islamic faith, because actually Islam existed in Nigeria long before Christianity. I have many Christian friends who are Nigerian and whose family are living alongside Muslims. So I think it's a misrepresentation of Nigeria as a whole to kind of say as though the picture that you're painting is these two groups have always been at war, or this is the normal behavior. For me, like I said, I believe Boko Haram is an organization that is created by an outside party, funded by at least an outside party with some, people in government who are happy for their own gains and agendas, and nothing to do with Islam.
To understand how jihadist groups first appeared in West Africa, we have to look back at two historical events. The first is the Algerian Civil War. In 1992, the military staged a coup in order to prevent the Islamist party from winning in a national election, launching the country into a brutal conflict. Eventually, Islamist fighters fled the country, seeking refuge in the deserted areas of northern Mali. There, they began to rebuild, engaging in criminal activity and allying with local rebel groups. The other significant event is the fall of Muammar Gaddafi in Libya in 2011. Gaddafi's regime had been a big benefactor of northern Mali, where the population felt neglected by the Malian government in the south, and the pastoral economy had been decimated by drought. So when Gaddafi's regime collapsed, northern Mali lost its main economic backer, and at the same time, fighters and weapons from Libya flowed into the region. Both of these events gave rise to what happened next.
In March, a month-long military coup created a power vacuum that allowed rebels to capture large areas in the north of Mali. That rebellion has since been hijacked by Islamist militants.
The French military intervened and reclaimed the north from jihadists in a matter of days, but they didn't defeat them.
So over the last 7 years, we have seen a very rapid expansion of violence throughout the region. Violence has also intensified. You only need to look at the figures to realize that.
Deaths due to jihadist violence in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have increased fivefold since 2016, with more than 4,000 deaths reported in 2019 alone.
I'm the most worried about Burkina Faso. There have been a lot more attacks against Burkina Faso, which up till about a year ago was fairly immune to this kind of militant violence.
In Burkina Faso alone, 500,000 people are currently displaced, and the recent surge of violence is forcing thousands more to flee their homes. And while some of these groups have adopted the branding of international terrorist organizations like the Islamic State or Al-Qaeda, they're still extremely local organizations. That's actually part of the reason why these groups have been so successful. They thrive in areas where there is either a weak government or no government at all, which allows local conflicts to arise, which they can then exploit. In some cases, they provide protection and social services to these marginalized communities, gaining their support and, in turn, allowing them to spread their ideology. Right now, there's a large UN peacekeeping force stationed in northern Mali, and France, alongside a military coalition of African states called the G5, are fighting militants. But with violence continuing to spill across borders, the message is clear. These groups are gaining strength, and the current strategy isn't working.
And nothing to do with Islam.
ISIS and Boko Haram have outraged the world in recent years with their enslavement of non-Muslims. Boko Haram enslaved Christian schoolgirls, and ISIS have enslaved many, including minority Yazidis in northern Iraq. One of the biggest misconceptions among liberal Muslims is around the topic of slavery. Muslims today realize that slavery is totally unacceptable, even within the minds of many Muslims. So many have now resorted to either denying that slavery was tolerated by Islam, or they will claim that Islam prohibited the acquisition of new slaves and encouraged Muslims to free their slaves. So the first question here is, did Islam actually encourage Muslims to free slaves? The answer to this is not that straightforward. There are occasions in the Quran when Muslims are told to pay fines through several methods as a minor punishment for something they've done, and one of those fines is freeing slaves. Chapter 4 verse 92 provides us with an example for this. Never should a believer kill a believer. But if it so happens by mistake, compensation is due. If one so kills a believer, it is ordained that he should free a believing slave and pay compensation to the deceased's family. Notice here, the reason for the manumission of the slave is as a punishment to his master for killing a Muslim by accident. Also notice how the slave freed in this case can only be a Muslim slave. Ibn Kathir's commentary says the following on this verse: "And whosoever kills a believer by mistake, he must set free a believing slave and submit compensation, blood money, to the deceased's family," thus ordaining two requirements for murder by mistake. The first requirement is the kafara, which is a fine, for the great sin that has been committed, even if it was a mistake. The kafara is to free a Muslim slave, not a non-Muslim slave. Imam Ahmad recorded that a man from the Ansar said that he brought a slave and said, "O Messenger of Allah, I have to free a believing slave, so if you see that this slave is a believer, I will free her." The Messenger of Allah asked her, "Do you testify that there is no deity worthy of worship except Allah?" She said yes. He asked her, "Do you testify that I am the Messenger of Allah?" She said yes. He asked, "Do you believe in resurrection after death?" She said yes. The Prophet said, "Then free her." Let's look at another example on whether manumission of slaves was encouraged. In the most authentic hadith collection of mainstream Islam, Sahih Bukhari records the following. Narrated Maymuna, the wife of the Prophet, that she manumitted her slave girl, and the Prophet said to her, "You would have got more reward if you had given the slave girl to one of your maternal uncles." So clearly Muhammad here tells his wife that it would have been better in God's eyes if she did not free the slave, but if she were instead to give her to one of her uncles instead. One more example from Sahih Bukhari. A man manumitted a slave, and he had no other property than that. So the Prophet cancelled the manumission and sold the slave for him. Nu'aym ibn Naham bought the slave from him. So here a man frees a slave, but Muhammad forces this poor slave back into slavery and sells him on. Imagine how short-lived this slave's joy was. The next question is, did the Muslims ever take free people and enslave them? The answer here again is unfortunately a very big yes. Not only did they take slaves, but female slaves that could be raped by their masters. Now, I know rape is a big word, and I understand that some Muslims will feel bad hearing it. But given that they're slaves in the first place, it doesn't really suggest it's some sort of consensual relationship. In chapter 4 of the Quran, verses 23 and 24, we read about which women are sexually forbidden to Muslim men. So verse 23 tells us which women are sexually prohibited from Muslims, and it continues in verse 24, which begins, "And all married women are forbidden unto you, save those captives whom your right hands possess." Now, I know some of you might still deny what this clearly says. Maybe some of you will say, "Hey, look, this is out of context." So, fine, let's just go look at the context and the reason this particular verse was revealed according to Islamic sources. Here we're looking at the reasons of revelation, or asbab an-nuzul, for this particular verse. And all married women are forbidden unto you, save those captives whom your right hands possess. We had captured female prisoners of war on the day of Awtas, and because they were already married, we disliked having any physical relationship with them. Then we asked the Prophet, Allah bless him and give him peace about them. And the verse, and all married women are forbidden unto you, save those captives whom your right hands possess, was then revealed, as a result of which we consider it lawful to have a physical relationship with them. Please just imagine this scene for a second. The Muslim army captures women who are still married to other men. The Muslim fighters realize these women are married and are reluctant to have sex with them. They take the matter to Muhammad and he reveals a verse which tells them it's perfectly fine to have sex with women married to other men as long as they are now your slaves. How is this any different to Islamic State today? This story also appears a few times in Sahih Bukhari and will be linked in the description as well. Another story from another battle appears in Sahih Bukhari. During the battle with Bani al-Mustaliq, they, the Muslims, captured some females and intended to have sexual relations with them without impregnating them. So they asked the Prophet about coitus interruptus. The Prophet said, "It is better that you should not do it, for Allah has written whom He is going to create till the day of resurrection." So not only does Muhammad accept the rape of enslaved women by Muslim fighters, he gives them extremely poor advice on contraception. Finally, let's look at whether the Muslims traded in slaves. We already saw an example when Muhammad cancelled the slave's freedom earlier and forced him back into being a slave to be sold on. But here we'll read about the story of the massacre of the Jewish tribe in Medina, the Bani Qurayza, in numerous sources. So let's read page 466 of Muhammad's best known biography in Islam, otherwise known as the Sirah of Ibn Ishaq, the Ibn Hisham edit. Then the Apostle divided the property, wives, and the children of Bani Qurayza among the Muslims. Then the Apostle sent Sa'ad ibn Zayd al-Ansari, brother of bin Abd al-Ashhal, with some of the captive women of Bani Qurayza to Najd, and he sold them for horses and weapons. The Apostle had chosen one of their women for himself, Rayhana. She had shown repugnance towards Islam when she was captured and clung to Judaism. So in brief, after the Muslims killed all the men of this Jewish tribe, he took their property and enslaved their women and children. He then sent Sa'ad ibn Zayd with some of the women to a nearby city and sold them as slaves in exchange for horses and weapons. Muhammad keeps one of these women for himself, and she evidently didn't like him after he killed all the men of the tribe, which may have included her father and brothers. If this is not as bad as ISIS, then I really don't know what is. We also read later in the Sirah on page 593 about the spoils of war in Hunayn, and an incident where Muhammad made a deal with the men of the Hawazin tribe by handing back their enslaved women and children in exchange for their camels and other animals. Unayna took an old woman of Hawazin and said as he took her, "I see that she is a person of standing in the tribe, and her ransom may be high." When the Apostle returned the captives at a price of 6 camels each, he refused to give her back. Zuhair Abu Surad told him to let her go, for her mouth was cold and her breasts flat. So they eventually convinced him to exchange this slave woman for 6 camels, with the argument that she didn't even have big breasts and was not worth as much as he had thought. We read yet another example of Muhammad dealing in the slave trade in a hadith from Sahih Muslim. This hadith tells us about a Muslim man who saw women and children of a tribe fleeing towards a mountain during a battle. He then shoots an arrow and enslaves them, taking the prettiest girl among them as his own slave. Among them was a woman from Banu Fazara. She was wearing a leather coat. With her was her daughter, who was one of the prettiest girls in Arabia. I drove them along until I brought them to Abu Bakr, who bestowed that girl upon me as a prize. So we arrived in Medina. I had not yet disrobed her when the Messenger of Allah met me in the street and said, "Give me that girl, O Salama." I said, "Messenger of Allah, she has fascinated me." I had not yet disrobed her. When, on the next day, the Messenger of Allah again met me in the street and said, "O Salama, give me that girl. May God bless your father." I said, "She is for you, Messenger of Allah. By Allah, I have not yet disrobed her." The Messenger of Allah sent her to the people of Mecca and surrendered her as ransom for a number of Muslims who had been kept as prisoners at Mecca. So this overly keen Muslim was looking to have sex with this beautiful slave, but Muhammad kept insisting that he hand her over to him instead. And then he uses what was obviously a very highly valuable slave girl to sell her on to the Meccan pagans in exchange for prisoners. So in conclusion, for the point of slavery, we can see clearly it's more than justified in Islam in numerous places. Capturing women and girls as sex slaves is not something that ISIS invented. They understand their religion all too well, and Islamic sources tell them what Muhammad did and they follow. It's as simple as that.
Jennifer Caffarella is a Syria and ISIS specialist and one of the authors of ISIS's Second Comeback. It's an assessment that uses declassified information and research to develop a picture of the next ISIS resurgence. And what might an ISIS resurgence look like?
What one has to watch for is how they sort of try to reconstitute or rebuild or rebrand themselves in a way such that they have learned from those lessons and are able to endure longer as a caliphate than they were the first time. I don't have the imagination to tell you how that's going to go, but that ideology remains a powerful one and one that inspires a lot of people and one that is expansive and worldwide.
The global ISIS expansion has included adding new formal provinces to the ISIS structure. We have seen a redoubling of that ISIS effort to expand in northern Africa, and now an expansion farther south to the DRC and other Central African states. We've simultaneously seen an expansion in the East Asia regions. ISIS has had a province in Afghanistan since early in the caliphate, but has now expanded to include a separate province in Pakistan and a separate province in India. These ISIS provinces are in addition to what ISIS calls the East Asia province, based in the Philippines, where ISIS had achieved a major success in 2017, seizing the provincial capital of Marawi and defending it against the Philippine security forces for a number of weeks.